Hi, I'm here with Dale Crogan, Captain and Paramedic with the Fire Department. Welcome, Dale.
Thanks, Jamie.
We're so glad that you're here today because we really want to hear the latest on first responders and mental health. So maybe you could just tell us a little bit about your background and your current role with the Fire Department.
Sure. I'm the peer support coordinator, have been for about 12 years. The role in the fire department is really that to help manage critical incidents, stress, PTSD, signs and symptoms of stress, and develop programs along the way.
And so what led you to this position? What did you do before in the fire department?
So I was a captain on a fire truck. We actually had a suicide in our fire department, and our fire chief at the time, who I was working closely with on some projects, said, we need to do more, we need to do better. Asked me to come in and start building out the pieces of the program. That's how it really started.
Okay, well, yeah, it's sad how sometimes this tragedy motivates us into further action. Yeah, but thank you for stepping up to that role. So tell us a little bit about how you think about trauma and mental health care with firefighters in particular.
It's been an interesting transition over these last few years. I would say 10 years ago, it was hard to get first responders, firefighters specifically, to really open up about trauma and what they were seeing. And I think that as the stigma has changed as far as being able to talk about stress, we're more comfortable talking about what we see at work and how to identify those issues or those traumas, but not as comfortable talking about our personal lives, which we know adds to that level of stress and exposure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's good to see that there has been progress, that finally, firefighters, first responders are able to acknowledge even the stress that they have on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, it's come in small bites, but I think where we're at today, people are more comfortable talking about burnout. They're more comfortable talking about fatigue and sleep, which this opens the door to really talk about what we see on a daily basis when it comes to humanity, injuries, trauma, all the exposures.
So how do you see people's personal lives affecting their ability to handle stress on the job?
I think that really is the key right now. We've done so much to develop programs to help with the job stress, or to at least address or identify the job stress. But when you're the fixer in the community, you're that person that everybody comes to for help, no matter what the issue is. It's sometimes hard to see the issues that are in your personal life that need that level of fixing. So we carry that bag, those rocks, those issues with us into our work, which just adds a whole other level of exposure.
Definitely, and I will say, first responders are not the only ones that are going to deal with, how do I deal with my personal life and my job? But I think that you guys have that kind of doubled, quadrupled from everybody else.
At times it feels that way. It used to be easy, I shouldn't say used to, one of the ways that we coped was trying to come to work and leave everything else at home, and then go home and leave everything else at work. But now life is just so integrated. Your closest friends are some of the people that you work with. Your family, in a lot of cases when it comes to first responders, are all part of the people that you work with. So it's hard to keep those two components separate, which I don't think is a healthy way to do it anyways. But it allows those two things to be more connected, so the stress flows a little bit differently now.
Yeah, and I'm going to totally agree with you on this. But I think these old kind of coping mechanisms, particularly around compartmentalization for people who are in high stress jobs, at one point we thought that was going to work, but it's really kind of a house of cards that can only last so long until it blows up and falls apart. So, I think making that headway in the fire department and bringing those things together is a sign of massive progress and not an easy thing to do.
No, definitely not an easy thing to do. But it has been a good opportunity to see how first responders who really kind of view themselves a little bit differently than the general public, which is probably not the healthiest perspective. But once you get opened up and you get exposed to the idea that we all need help, kind of opens the door to okay, I'm like everybody else in the community. I just really get to do this super cool job 10 days a month. And I think that's really made a difference for us getting into the root of some of these issues, whether it be relationships, whether it be children, whether it be finances, or whether it be all the childhood stresses that come with you when you start this career.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, you've done some really innovative lifestyle interventions. Could you talk about your belief around how lifestyle plays a role and overall health plays into mental health?
Oh, definitely. I think that that's probably been one of the areas where we've been able to really see people heal differently than what we've seen before, right? I think before people felt better and went back to work and were able to have more capacity, if you will, to do the job longer, but the stress just piled back up. And it was really about how do we create better habits. And I think society as a whole has gotten better when it comes to sleep and nutrition and exercise. But I think when you put those components together with the first responder world and then start adding the real true behavioral changes, right? Whether we're talking about mindfulness, whether we're talking about spirituality, whether we're talking about connection or grounding, I think that has really made a big difference for us. So we're really trying to add those components to all the different treatment modalities that are out there.
One of the interesting conversations we had once was about the difference between firefighters and police officers. And one of the things that you said to me, correct me if I'm wrong, but that it was so nice for firefighters to have the capacity to work out on the job when there's downtime, and that how much that improved their physical health, which seems to increase their resiliency.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the things that has been really ingrained in us as firefighters is that value of having to stay in condition to physically do the job. But now being able to see this as a true stress reliever when we go out and we're exposed or we have these high incidents, these high stress incidences, and seeing people use that same sort of fitness level or connection to your body in a way to reduce stress, not just to create the muscle and the conditioning to do the job, but to actually release things. And I think that's changed across the board.
That's a beautiful way to conceptualize it.
The gym is no longer just a gym. For a lot of people, it's a place for decompression and reconnections, which is great.
That is really great. Yeah, that's awesome.
We've gone from having heavy weights to weights with yoga mats and with different things like that. So it's been fun. It's fun.
You guys aren't just meatheads anymore, right? Just bulking up.
And I think that would be an amazing thing to see change in all first responder worlds, whether it be police department or EMS, or really even if we're talking about doctors and nurses that are in those critical care units or emergency rooms for sure.
Yeah, well, physicians and nurses are some of the worst in terms of taking care of their own health. And we're supposed to be the role models for everyone else. So it is funny how, this idea of being in service to one's community, which is so important. And I like to affectionately call you Saint Dale because of all the good things that you've done for others and continue to always do. But it is important to bring those values back to oneself and say, hey, I've got to take care of me, otherwise how am I going to be of service to others?
I think that is really the nail on the head when it comes to the first responder mentality. Right? We talk about being in service and we talk about doing all of these things for everyone. And when you really, you kind of whittle it down, we sit around and wait till something bad happens and we go out and fix the problem in 20 minutes and then we go back and we have a sandwich, right? And
yeah.
That's kind of our mentality. But realizing that you have to be able to deliver that service. And I think that's what started the cultural change, at least for the fire department for sure. And then once you got to that next level with really having not just the capacity, but the capacity for compassion, the capacity for not absorbing everything that you're seeing, right? And trying to figure out how do I set those barriers up to know where I'm at when I have my limitations or when I don't. And that's one of the benefits of the fire department, is that we come in a group. Oftentimes PD shows up by themselves. So they've got to be able to take on that stress sometimes, even when they don't have the capacity to do it. It's tough.
Yeah, that is tough. And it makes a whole lot of sense. I think there's many people in the community who really value first responders for the work that they're doing to keep all of us, functioning in society and doing what we all want to do. And they really want to support first responders, but they're not always sure how. Do you have any tips on how, your average person could be supportive or show compassion or lend a helping hand.
Yeah, you know, there's so many great organizations out there that provide services and funding, which are always wonderful to donate to and spend time in and even do volunteer work for. But I think on the day-to-day level, I think it's really acknowledging that your first responders are not superheroes, right? Although praise feels wonderful and gratitude feels great, but we are really just ordinary people. We've been trained and given this opportunity to deliver this job. We weren't born this way. This is something that's developed over time. And I think remembering that allows us as the community to realize when somebody's carrying more weight. Because when you see somebody as a superhero or as this ultimate role model or next level, we don't really recognize the weight that they're carrying on a day-to-day basis. So I think normalizing it is a big step in the right direction.
That's words of wisdom for sure. And it seems to go into what we've talked about a little bit in the past around male identity and what it means to be a masculine man, but also open to vulnerability, and that you don't always have to be this, perfect, over-idealized idea of what that is, because where does that really get anybody?
Yeah.
But yeah, could you share your thoughts about that? Because I think you dove into that pretty deeply.
Yeah, I think as you look back and really how most of us start this career, we're all young men and young women, and first responder world has changed, but it's still pretty dominated by the male population. Most of us really, our brains weren't even developed when we got here. We're still working through who we are and how we are, and you step into a role where everybody tells you how great you are, and it's hard not to absorb that and to start living kind of that alter ego sort of mindset. So I think having that ability as that masculine person to realize what love and compassion really is, not just in a way that is in a relationship, but in a way that's healing and connected with just everyday people. And I think that's made a big difference, or is making a big difference, when men can go into a room with other men and feel a loving connection in a way that isn't having to be worried about showing up as what society thinks a masculine man should be, or in this case, what a first responder man should be. So I think that's an important part for us as we're learning, is just learning how to love and learning how to really understand what connection is in a way that's supportive and still able to do the job.
Yeah, I think that's the trick right there, is how to hold that place of love, which is what makes the world go round, but also be able to do your job. And I think that is a level of mastery that all of us at one point hope to achieve.
Yeah, I agree. And I think for a lot of us as first responders, it's got to start with really learning how to love yourself better. Right?
Yeah.
Starting there, and then it just leads from there.
Well, thank you so much for gracing us with your humility and wisdom today. I really appreciate it, Dale.
Thank you. This was wonderful.